The beard is back with a nerd today. Look, we're all nerds, but I get to actually officially call my guest because that's in his name. I can't get in trouble.
No, not
Although
at
I
all.
enjoy being called a nerd anymore. Like in school, it was like, whoa, I don't even really know what that means. And now it's like, I get it. And there's so many fascinating parts. Anyway, welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. I'm very excited. Me and Cameron, first of all, welcome Cameron from Nerd Book Review, man. I'm so happy to have you here. I love your channel. You
Thank you.
burst those videos out and you do a wonderful job at what I come to Booktube to watch as a viewer. You do very well.
hmm
So welcome, man. I'm so excited to have you here. How's your night been going?
Good. Yeah, I made sure I rocked a couple of Red Bulls earlier, so I'm ready to go. I got my about my third win of the day. I
Yeah.
got up, ended up at 3 in the morning this morning for work, so it was kind of accidental, but I was up, so I was ready to go. So now I'm just super excited to be here. This is the first time I've ever done a live interview before, so thanks for
It's
having me.
fun. Oh man, of course. So just to show you what's so fun about it, like Ithra has been somebody who is just so much fun on my channel. And like she likes to do a lot of audiobooks.
Oh, huh.
And she posts on Twitter all the time and she goes through an audiobook like there's no other, man. And it just today I was like, finally, Ithra, you have to stop because every single thing that you're throwing up here, I have to add because look, I trust her. And she's got great taste and she loves horses. Horses are awesome. Um, Josh Walker, another, he's a wonderful indie author. The Exile of Water and Gold, Golden Water. I hope I didn't mess that up, Josh. But leave it to me to do stuff like that. Fear the Beard, my guy. Thank you for being here. But that's so cool, right? To see, to look over and see awesome people. Timothy Wolf, who I'm having on tomorrow. It's funny, man. He was like, when I had negative 10 subscribers, right before I even basically started, Timothy Wolf was like, he's that guy. He sent me his books right from the start and has just been a huge supporter. So it's so
That's
cool to
awesome.
see. Yeah, Tim McKay. We'll get to the rest of you guys down here. I see you. I hear you. All of you wonderful people. NJ Alexander.
Yeah, we were
But
just talking. Sorry to interrupt. We were just talking a few
no,
minutes ago about ML Spencer, who was actually like one of the very first people, like 6 years ago, that I did an interview in the old podcast days with your Battle Mage series, and that was, it was awesome. One of my very first indie series I ever read.
so man, I read a lot of, well, what I consider a lot because I didn't start off reading, right? So
hmm
these days with 4 children, especially having some young ones, I don't get a lot of reading. I'll sit down to read like 10 times a day. I still haven't learned that. I just, a few words in and it's like, Daddy. But no, the, the book that I last read that took me a couple months to get through because it's a chunker was Dragon Mage.
Uh-huh.
And I had, excuse me, I had Melinda ML Spencer on the other day, and just uh, for me, man, it was like Aram, however you choose to, is the main character in Dragon Mage, and just related to every part of him. Like he's the shy, and in high school, that's how I was shy. I didn't really like to talk to people because I'm 6'5" and I was really overweight.
Uh-huh.
I was like 360 pounds, and that's like 110 pounds more than I am now. And I just didn't want to be seen, right? So
hmm
I would walk in these rooms as big as I was, 6'5". There's no way that I'm getting to sit down without people seeing me. So I just related a lot to that character, man. And just the vastness of it, the story, it was wonderful. But man, so we'll start here. This is a little different. My second question for you is where I usually start, but I'll start here with you just because I feel like we have to live close. There's lots of farmland where I'm in Ohio.
See,
But I'm by Columbus, which is actually the capital now. But I live in Chillicothe, which was the very first state capital of
okay.
Ohio. But I love what you do. Tell everybody what you do, man.
Oh yeah. So we're a little ways away. I'm in Idaho, actually.
Oh
So
wow, yeah.
yeah, so a little ways away, not Iowa. Everyone gets that. But yeah, no, I actually own a commercial composter. So about 9 months a year, I spend like 60 hours a week in a tractor, and then I get 3 months off in the winter, which is nice. So I'm just coming off of that about a month or so ago. So getting into the swing of things. And so I do most of my reading in my tractor. I think I've listened to like 10 audiobooks this month while I'm getting, things ready. And then a little bit later in the year when everything's a little smoother, then I'll do a lot more reading, like physical books in the tractor. But yeah, that's how I get all my reading done. I've only got 2 kids. They don't outnumber me, unlike you with the 4. But I've got both of my kids, a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. They're both doing a lot of sports right now already, and so about 4 nights a week, 5 days a week, depends. We've got sports practice afterwards, and so if I didn't have that tractor time, I would definitely have a hard time getting all my reading in.
Yeah. So you have girls?
No, I have my 9-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter, so one of each.
I don't know why I thought you had 2 girls, but that's cool, man. One of each is great.
Yeah. We decided to stop at 2, one because we had the 2. So, but I mean, I just can't imagine 4.
So, my wife and I, before we had our 4th, which is our only girl, and she's 7. She's going on 8 months, 7.5, something like that. We found an old Facebook post. My wife's like, "Check this out." It was with right before we had our second son, our second child, period, and it said, "We're so happy. We're stopping with 2." And we're almost, at this point when she's seen the post, it was like, we're almost to 4, right? So, we obviously knew what was going on. We didn't, it's kind of a long story, but like we had things planned with the doctor, and both of it was like God worked in my life and was like, you're having 4 kids and there's nothing you can do about it, buddy.
Yeah.
So it's fun, man. It's difficult, as I'm sure you know. It's like, there's different challenges each day, and I try to better myself because as a husband and as a dad, because I think us as adults, not just men, we're like, we look at our beautiful family and we're like, what can I do better?
Yeah.
But I really look up to what you're doing, man. It's compost. So when you create this compost, right, which is a system in its own.
Yeah.
Where do you sell? Do you sell the compost, or is
So I'm a contractor, and so I work with 3 dairies and a feedlot, and they just put their big old rows themselves, and I just take my machine to the different places and turn the rows, and when they're done, and then the feedlots do the selling. I see a comment on the mountains in the north and the potatoes in the south. I'm definitely surrounded by the potatoes. Yeah. So because of that, that's one of the big reasons why the composting business is so big around here, is that they can't, they have to have the compost is bacteria free and stuff, and so you have to be able to guarantee that to put it on your potatoes, because so they have to. So potatoes and hops, that's where the big the 2 big
beer and French fries.
Yep, beer and French fries. That's where most of the product that I make goes.
So that's cool, man. Because look, I grew up in half my childhood in the city, and then the rest of it and most of my adult life in the country. And we make our compost right on our own land. We throw our food, and I'm sure that there's much more strict guidelines, like you just kind of covered. So do you have a third-party lab kind of test your compost, and that's how you prove it?
Yep, they do. Most of the customers, so like I said, it's mostly big commercial companies that are buying it from us. They'll actually have it tested themselves to make sure, so that when they put it on their fields, they can say, "Hey, we tested it and it said it was good," kind of a deal,
I love that, man. Yeah. That's cool. I always love to learn this. Look, I always cover this, and we're here for books, but there's so many more aspects to us as humans that I love to talk about. So I'm glad you covered that, man. That's so intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's definitely different,
Yeah, it's not every day that I talk to a composter, and honestly, I didn't know that it was its own specific. So it was really cool to kind of do a little research and talk to you about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw some other names up real quick. Happy Friday, NJ. I can't wait to have him on, man. He's another wonderful. He just dropped a book. It's I have so many books that go through my mind that I can't think of his. I'll think of it in a minute.
That's what like that's one thing that I always thought about that would scare me for doing live. I feel like I would just like I'd have the name right there and then just freeze up every time.
So I think that it's one of those things, like, because ask anybody, like E.L. Montague, my Discord moderator and a guy that keeps me on time. You was talking about him just a second ago, the comment he threw up. I forget people that I'm speaking with the next day, books, authors all the time. And look, I don't think anybody's held it against me yet. It's just a part of who I am. The
Good.
dad brain, right?
Yeah. No, I feel you.
Yeah, dude. So I think what you bring that I noticed right off the rip that makes your booktube channel special is you talk about what you're reading,
Mhm.
and then you speak of it in a non-spoiler way, but an intriguing fact, kind of like how you experienced it, how it made you feel, what it's full of, the kind of subgenre, the genre would go by, really anything you'd need to know. Where did that passion for reading start for you?
You know, I'll be honest. I have been reading since I mean, I don't actually remember when I learned to read, and from the very beginning, I loved. I think the Peter Rabbit books when I was a little kid. Then, like moving on from there, like Goosebumps, Redwall, is one of my favorite series of all time. And then in high school, I got into like the Wheel of Time. Actually, that's where I came up with my where my name for my YouTube channel came up. The Nerd Book Review is it's kind of a friendly dig at my dad. Who my dad's one of those guys that he was a cowboy and then a farmer, and like is one of those guys that like he's proud of the fact that he's only read a few books in his life, kind of thing, you
Yeah.
know. And so you know, even I mean, he's that got to be he looked like the Marlboro Man when he was younger, and that's his deal, right? And so
Yeah.
he would come into the room when I'd be reading, and he'd be like, hey, you need to put your nerd books down and go out and play outside. And so just as kind of like a joke and a dig at him, but I mean, it's a friendly one, right? I get along with my dad, but it's one of those things where it's like, I was like, hey, Dad, I made a first podcast now YouTube channel called the Nerd Book Review. Just wanted to let you know you had some input in it. And he thought it was hilarious, but you know, that's where the name came from.
Having a dad that is very much in the same vein as the no nonsense, like kind of like hard nosed, stubborn dad, man. I get it. My dad's like, I've given, so the last one I gave him to try was a Western, because I'm like, I kind of what you say about your dad. It's like, I can see him relating to the Western part of it, or like the hard work. He's a hard worker. And it was Cold West by
Clayton Snyder?
Clayton Snyder. Yeah. I was like, look, I think if you're going to read anything, it's kind of short. You're going to, and he's like on page 3. And again, I can't get him to, and that's how I was for a while. I just couldn't, I couldn't understand what was so fun about reading. And I'm glad that I finally know. Maybe one day we'll convert the old dads, right?
Yeah, I'm 100% certain I'm not converting my dad at this point. He's now retired. They built a house in the mountains here in Idaho, and he spends all of his time on the deck drinking hams as his beer of choice. And I don't know if it used to be popular back in the old in the 70s and 80s, and he still drinks it. Apparently the mountain grocery store still sells it, and he sits on the deck and watches nature and has a good time.
That's awesome, man. Because look, if you don't have a book in your hand, the next like best thing for me is watching the birds, listening to the wildlife.
Yeah.
Now, remind me, in Idaho, in the wintertime, do you get snow?
Oh yeah. It's definitely and they live in the mountains too. So at one point this year, they probably had like 3-4 feet of snow in the
Beautiful.
I'm only about 30 miles west of Boise, the capital. So I don't like, it's not very common that we have snow on the ground for a long period of time,
Sure. I thought, I heard you say mountains. I'm like, I'm sure they have such a beautiful time, at least even if it's just a short time, to kind of see the trees with, and even Ohio, the pines. I have a lot of pine trees in my yard, and I'm like halfway between like BFE, if you will, and in the country, or the city. And it's just beautiful in the wintertime. We don't get enough here in Ohio to really say that we get a lot of snow, right? But I kind of grew up between here and Michigan, northern Michigan, which gets a lot of snow. That's where my mom and dad grew up. Yeah. I wanted to throw up too. Yes, I agree, Montague. But look, man, I just got his. Me and him started talking when I started my Discord when I very first started, and he's put out a book. And man, I'm just so proud of him. I'm so happy. Like it's cool to just to feel it. He's such a good dude. And look, I've read most of the stories in Heirs to a Flawed Creation, and it's really good. He's a gritty. His dialogue, man, is wonderful. So, man, I'm just glad to see. I got that in the mail the other day, and I was super, super happy about it. Yeah. So, what are you reading? There we go. What are you reading right now, Cameron?
You know what? Okay, so I have never been a lit RPG fan, and then I about literally only like a month ago started listening to the audiobooks actually for Dungeon Crawler Carl, and it's amazing, right? Like they're awesome. And so because of that, I was like, well, I got to figure out if I actually like lit RPG or I just like Dungeon Crawler Carl. So this month, I'm right now, I just finished today my 6th lit RPG book of the month.
Wow.
And turns out Dungeon Crawler Carl's still my favorite, but I am such a world building fan at this point in my life that I actually, as long as it's a cool magic system, and I like the portal ones where someone goes to another place kind of thing.
Sure.
And turns out I like them. When I do my episodes, that's always I always break down the magic system and the world building. And so in this one, I've just for the couple of reviews I've done already that I've been able to record, I just changed the magic to the lit RPG system that's in it. So that's what I've been doing this month.
So with Dungeon Crawler Carl, did you start off not reading but listening?
Yeah, I started off. I don't remember what the reason why I got the first one was, but I did it, and then I told my wife, I'm like, I think that you would like this, and she made it about 4 hours in and bought the entire series.
Dude, Matt Dinneman's on another level, and then he hired the best audiobook narrator, dude.
It is so amazing. His Princess Donut. Oh my goodness, it's amazing.
He's in his underwear with a cat, right? And I'm like, where could this go that I could possibly relate to or enjoy? Oh, I was so wrong.
It's amazing. My wife, like I said, my wife is on her second. She's already on her second round of listening to them right now. So
that's cool because you and your wife, I'm guessing, read a lot of the similar kind of books. Okay, so the book that got me here, right, was a book that's not super well known. It's a traditional published book by J.M. Miro called Ordinary Monsters.
Okay, and I don't think I've actually read that before.
Let me grab it real quick. It's just the most beautiful. Oh, I might mess my green screen up, but no shame. Oh God! Oh, I didn't plan on. Oh, I made it closer. Oh yeah, I definitely did. There you can see the kitchen chair behind us.
There you are. Oh yeah, that'll happen. Yeah. I know. I set up for today with the behind the curtains because my house is currently undergoing a remodel. It is just torn apart, so I'm sitting in like the one spot that I can.
I understand. My very first interviews are without this behind me, and it's my kitchen table because I have a very small spot. We're working on getting our dream home, right? But right now, it's like that little spot. But this is the book that got me into. This is Ordinary Monsters. It's a gaslight, dark academia that you won't be able to compare to any other dark academia. It's totally different vein, but it's like early or late 1800s, and it's just got the best characters. The audiobook's great, but it just reads so well. Anyway, I finally got my wife to read a fantasy book, and that's what she's reading, and she's enjoying it.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, super excited for that. But I didn't know this. We were speaking a little bit before we come on, and you told me about a podcast you did. What did you do before? Because I can tell you've got some experience behind the camera or a microphone.
Yeah, the microphone. Yeah, we. So here's how it all started. Was my wife is also actually a pretty big fantasy reader. Just has been for years and years, and the two of us used to. We would, especially before we had kids, we would just read. I mean, I probably read 200 fantasy books a year before we had kids.
Wow.
I mean, I would in my tractor or before that in an excavator that I used to run all the time. I would just read. Like I could read like 8 hours a day often, right? And and then I would go home and we would either watch TV or read. And so we read just a ton. And we decided that we weren't talking about the books that we read enough. So we just got some recording equipment, and the two of us started recording podcasts. And that worked for a couple of months. And then we found a couple series that she's one of those people that if she loves a book, she's not going to stop and read another book until she's read every book in the series.
Okay.
And so we found out pretty quickly that like she was not going to be a good full-time co-host for me. And then I've been lucky enough. I have a group of buddies from college, some actually fraternity brothers that like we were all nerds, and we've been friends for more than 20 years now. And they were also reading, and I was like, "Hey, you guys want to like start coming on do the podcast with me?" And it was like an awesome excuse. Our wives couldn't say that no, you guys can't get together and have a couple beers and talk about books, right? I mean, like it was like the most wholesome, so for about 4 years until until the pandemic, I would get at least 2-3 times a month. I would get together with 3 or 4 of my buddies, and we would talk about fantasy books. We did about 85 episodes, I think, before we, stopped for the pandemic, and had a great time. Loved doing them. And these days, I think it's just too hard with kids and all that kind of stuff. So
I think that kind of stuff will come back around like full circle for you and I, particularly because those kids, which I'm not speeding this along at all because I'm loving my 1-year-old dude is like just the funniest cat around. He does this like I'm a huge music guy. All sorts of music, and he'll do this like dance move where he's like twisting his arms. They call it the crank it, and he's one, right? So it's just hilarious, man. But when the kids are a little more grown up, they're all in school, they can kind of take care of themselves. They don't need you to follow them to the bathroom. I'll have a little more time to read, but again, I don't want to rush that away. I'm having so much fun doing what I'm doing at the moment. And my other half, my wonderful other half, I hope all our kids love books as much as we do. Yes, love.
So far my son, he's actually into so we tried to do the Percy Jackson books, and he's all right with them. He likes it all right. But his new thing that he found that he really loves is actually he likes basically kind of like lit RPG books, actually the Minecraft books. He likes there's a series of books that they're like kids books, and they're like people in that made a Minecraft world, and it's a book about the series, and I can't remember what it's called right now, but he really loves it. He's on like the 3rd one of those right now, so that's his
super
big
cool. What do you remember the first book that like you read to either one of your children?
You know what? I bought some of the Redwall books actually, and I tried to get my son to read those with me, and he's not he doesn't like that they're like 400 pages long. I think they scare him. So, but otherwise, as far as I'm trying to think, we just have like your random assortment of like kids books that people bought, My daughter there's a series, her name is Betty, and there's a series of books like that are called like something, and then they'll end with Betty. And so she loves those. She likes to have those read to her. But otherwise,
beautiful name.
Yeah,
I love that.
It was my wife's grandma's name. So,
dude, I love that, man. I named my kids. My second was Benjamin Thomas, and he had some of her grandfather's name, some of my uncle's name. I love when that happens because it's not a hip new name, but it means something, right?
Yeah.
So I have a cousin named Betty, so I think that's just absolute a beautiful name, man. Congrats.
Yeah. Thanks.
Of course. So what I plan on, and again, I'm very much in the same vein as you with the kids books, like Llama Llama, Red Pajama, right?
Yeah, we have that one somewhere actually, like out and about. My daughter was just reading it the other day.
Oh,
she loves llamas.
Yeah. And they're very interesting animals. And look, I'll
Uh-huh.
call a llama an alpaca all day. There is a difference, though, right?
There is. Yeah,
Um,
I think llamas are bigger than alpacas, right? Like I could be wrong on which one's bigger, but I think it's llamas.
and I don't both spit. I know alpacas do. They'll
You know,
spit in
I
your eye.
I haven't spent a lot of time around them, but I am aware of that,
Weirdly,
the
where I
spitting.
live in Ohio, there's quite a few. Like, I
Are they?
wouldn't say like there's a lot, but I know two or three right off the top of the head where I can go and drive by daily, where they have like an alpaca herd, if you will.
Huh?
I don't know maybe it's their fur. I don't know what they harvest or if
Yeah,
they're just
it's a
buddies.
fur. Yeah, fur.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's beautiful. They're cool animals. There's so many animals out there. It's just like evolution did some work, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm a believer, but at the same time, there's like definitely some evolution going on. But I think it's cool because, again, I read my kids. They're still, my oldest is 5.
Hmm.
I'll read those kids' books, but and a lot of people who's watched this show, a bunch of, I talk about it all the time. I haven't read The Hobbit yet. I hope to experience that with my kids first. So I'll read it on my own if they're not digging it, but I do want to try at least with them. Um,
I'm a heretic, and my wife and I actually, one of the things we bonded over was neither of us likes the Lord of the Rings books. We
mhm.
are actually a Lord of the Rings movie family, and I don't care what that says about me as a person. I tried to read them in high school. Both of us did actually, and I feel like they're just kind of slow.
So I've started The Hobbit a few times. I listened to it. I don't remember anything on the audiobook, but I will say that it's a flowery prose.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily get to the point very quickly. I understand why it's huge. And look, I didn't have a clue that they were books until the movies were made. I'm sorry, it's just the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
And me and my family and my kids love the movies. So I hope that at least halfway love the book, or they love the book when I read it to them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's I actually, so I do like The Hobbit a lot better than the Lord of the Rings books, just offhand. It is, I think it's better than the books themselves.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So who's the guy that plays Bilbo? I don't know his name, but he is a fantastic actor. I love everything he's in. Um,
Elijah Wood?
no, no, no.
No, the
So not
the
in the
one that he
Hobbit.
was the one that also played Rudy.
I
Was he
think no, so.
Sean
Rudy, I think
Astin?
was
Sean
yeah,
something?
yeah. That was um. Oh my gosh, Bill. You've got Elijah Wood and you've got the Shaw guy, right? But I'm talking about actually the Hobbit movies.
Oh,
Um,
the older one? Oh, I'm
yeah,
trying.
yeah.
I can't.
So after the Lord of the Rings movies, the Hobbits that came out, the guy that
Is it
played
Martin
Bilbo,
something or other? Martin
it is
Freeman? Is that what
Martin.
someone's saying?
Yes, it is Martin.
Alexander threw that one out there.
So he's man. I don't know what it is, but his acting and everything he does is just outstanding. Yeah, yeah. Alexander, my guy, of
There we
course,
are.
Martin
Yeah.
Freeman. Cool. So definitely I'm a movie fan. Hopefully the kids like the books too. Uh, we can always hope because it's an
Yeah.
older prose. It's a different time this guy wrote in.
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask
Very
you a
different.
question though, real quick,
Yeah.
just offhand. Like, how did you get into like reading indie then? Just offhand, like with what you said, how you started reading.
So okay, so let's see how that did happen. Honestly, I love this because I don't get asked questions near enough, and I
Yeah.
love talking. Who doesn't like talking about themselves? So I got into obviously only knowing about traditional published authors.
Uh-huh.
When I started my channel, though, I started my Twitter at the same time, and I think a lot of that has to do with why I found the indie crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I wish I could tell you the first one. I know David T. List, D.B. Rook, um, Christopher Brenning. I was just floored finding out how many indie authors there were.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of research what that was. And once I did and realized what an indie author does to get their name out there, because look, they're doing everything. You know this.
Mm-hmm.
And to get the success that you see, like Ryan Cahill or um, God, Michael J. Sullivan did some indie.
I'm
books
actually
that
re-listening to Age of Myth again right now because it before Dungeon Crawler Carl was by far my favorite audiobook series. Though that trilogy, the Age of Myth, Legends, and is it War? I can't remember what the third one is right now. Anyways, those three I loved them. They were my favorite. I don't know if they're still free, but like a couple days ago they were all free from the Michael J. Sullivan audiobooks.
Oh, I love so I get the monthly credit, right? And
Uh-huh.
with that comes a lot of free, which
Yeah.
as I'm sure you know, because I've loved that you've been talking, and I think you're farther than me now. Uh the Soul and Empire, the Sun Eater.
Oh
Sun Eater.
yeah. I
Oh,
love it.
dude. The
Ah,
first two
so
are
good.
just they're free. As long as
Yeah,
you get
that's
that
how I
monthly
got
credit.
started. That's what got me started on them was because the first two were free.
Now, I hope that, and I don't know, but the first two books are narrated by the same guy, and he does a
They all
great
are.
job. Oh, they all are good.
Yep.
That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, the Sun Eater. Like I know it's not indie, but but like it. Um, basically, I think this. Well, one of the big things too is he one of his favorite book series of all time is the Vorkosigan Saga by Louis Buchhold, and when I first started listening to him, and I was like, I swear there's a bunch of Easter eggs out there. Well, then I got into Mike's book reviews, and I was
Yeah.
in his Discord, and Christopher Rocchio's wife. I asked in the chat, I was like, hey, was he inspired by the Vorkosigan Saga, which I absolutely love? And his wife's like, oh yeah, he loves it so much. He wants our first son to be named Miles, which the main character. And she's like, I'm not going to do that. But I mean, like, that's one of those things where you're just like, it's so crazy in the book world where like someone that you're such a big fan of that you can talk to, like,
Yeah.
and interact with. Like, it's a cool thing, I think.
It so when I started the channel, it's like guys like Mark Lawrence, and I never dreamed of being able to speak with Raymond E. Feist. Like, but
Oh yeah,
I've
that's awesome.
noticed
That was a cool interview too.
oh my gosh, dude, I still haven't understood. Like, I don't know how much I appreciate that interview until like
Uh-huh.
I've read more of his work and been in this community longer. Like, I felt
Hmm.
so lucky, but same experience. Like, I think watching, because Mike's book reviews is when I binged, right,
Hmm.
a lot before making my own channel. Same with Matt's fantasy book reviews.
Yeah, Matt is
And
he's my favorite of the actual book review channels. His is my favorite that I watch regularly.
I believe that because you two talk about books in a very similar way. You're no nonsense, kind of right to the point, but still have your own personality at the same time. Love that. That makes total sense to me. And I love both of your channels. So I saw on Mike's book reviews, Ryan Cahill, right?
Uh-huh.
And I kept hearing this indie, self-published. I have to look more into this because that's what that Ryan guy is that I keep hearing so much about. So I have to kind of, think I have to give credit to Ryan's books and Mike's book reviews. He's probably so tired of me saying that. Like, I'm sure he's not, because I feel like that would be the coolest thing to inspire
Nah.
somebody. But yeah, that channel, along with his recommendations of not only that, The Bound and the Broken, which is,
Hmm.
man, classic fantasy with that modern twist in the finest ways. But also like Sun Eater, man. I remember hearing of Sun Eater way before I picked it up. And I love seeing the traction that he's got due to,
Hmm.
Mike and Daniel Green's really shouting him out a lot right now. Um,
But
and I see,
I think Mike and Patrick Leo basically made Ryan Cahill. Like,
yeah,
both of them, he had their recommendations, and they both got, a good platform. And you know what? Now look at him. I mean, he sold over 100,000 copies of the first book already. I mean, 99.9% of traditionally published authors would love to have the sales numbers that Ryan Cahill does.
I've had him on the channel. It was really young or early in the channel, and I haven't been around that long, so it was super young or super
Hmm.
early. And I wish there were certain things I would have asked him, like, compared to H. Oh no, well, not only that. This is what I thought of first. Has he gotten an offer, from Orbit or something? They'd be crazy not to.
Hmm.
If you ask me, I'm sure he has. I don't know if he's talked about it in the past or not, but
I don't know.
um,
I think he's big enough at this point and has like his whole alpha and beta reader systems so set up that I think he would be crazy to go traditionally published at this point. He's got a
Yes,
big enough audience, you know.
absolutely. I totally agree with you, but I think it would still be the coolest thing to know. Like, I'm an indie author who, I did this as like on the side of my job. Now it's my job, and
Yeah,
to turn down somebody, as a self, because
yeah.
I think he'd be crazy too. He's getting much more of his earned money than he would be,
Oh yeah,
and much more
absolutely.
say in his books,
Yeah.
than he would be on. The last one that I didn't really know was an indie published author, too far behind interviewing them, now is published and does a wonderful job, was Anthony Ryan,
Oh
Blood
yeah.
Song.
Yep.
I didn't know that was first published as an indie book. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think that I don't want to be a liar here, but I swear that I read it because it was in Spiffbo, but I could be wrong on that. But seems like that's back when I first read those books.
I think you're right. And again, I don't have a clue to be positive, but I feel like I remember him saying that or reading that somewhere. But I also think it's incredibly cool uh, to see some of, very much what I like about hearing about your day to day, your job and how that makes you a human, right? Because
Mm.
behind books and stuff, we always like those more human, or at least I do, those more human traits. It makes us even more relatable. Was like Mark Lawrence, how he actually did a lot of research, and he's a mathematician at heart. Like,
Yeah,
something
he
I
has like
tried.
he has top secret clearance with both the UK and the US government, right?
And
Yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy.
and what I found out also was like he had been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize by like down the line. So when you get nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, those who helped, right, get a part of the award, their name on the list, right, and that was kind of
Hmm.
his story. But it was cool, just to find out that sort of thing, and I think that's kind of what brought me to reading, period, not just fantasy, but like you think fantasy before you're a reader and you're like, okay, this is fake. I can't relate. When I've read a lot of not nonfiction, but murder mystery or a biography. And
Hmm.
honestly, I relate with people more through fantasy than I think I ever could through
Yeah.
any other genre, because it really puts on display that human part of struggle, of success, of the journey that we're all on. It just displays it so well. Would you agree with that?
No, no, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, I was Ed just said he made it. Hello. I had to make sure I said hi to him.
Oh yeah, my guy. You said hey, he's
Yeah.
my man.
His book Daughter of the Beast was my book of the year for 2023. I loved it.
I
So
love seeing that behind you when you do your videos.
yeah. Well, you know what? One of these days I need to get him out and show. He even put doodles in there. So in the in like on the front page of all the books. So um
So
love Ed.
I have to crack open this bottle now, since we brought him up and he's in here. He knows he's my guy. He's been on my channel twice and he's about to come back
That's
very
awesome.
soon. So when I was laid up, right, he sent me a package full of really fun stuff that here in America we don't get. And I'm going to be trying all of that for like the first time here soon on a live with him.
That's
Uh,
awesome. Now, Ed
yeah,
is such an awesome, awesome human being, in addition to being a great author.
man, he's got the attitude that I wish I had most of the time. He's a
Yeah.
very positive guy, and he look. I don't know if you saw the post of he was kind of getting back at this guy who had kind of been sexualizing. Dude,
Yes.
that post, I was like, he's got balls, dude. Like, I loved it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely Ed definitely seems like the kind of dude that would be the life of any party he's at without being uh like the kind of guy.
Obnoxious.
Yeah, yeah. Because you everybody knows that person that has Ed's level of just do anything, but will take things too far. I feel like Ed is that guy that's always going to keep things like positive.
He's so respectful. Like, it's hard to find a gentleman like Ed, like where they've got balls, but at the same time respectfully. Like,
Yeah,
that's a rare combo.
yeah, that's how I feel every time I talk to Ed. So Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
like I said, loved his books. Daughter of the Beast, like I said, was my favorite book of 2023. And I was so happy that it was a SPIFBO finalist, and
Oh,
so we're about done with that year, or with this one, and we're gonna. I don't care how ridiculous it is. I'm going full on calling SPIFBO 10 SPIFBox the entire year. I don't
oh,
care. I'm gonna do it.
yeah. So I don't think you're alone in that, and I'm on there with you. So there's two of us so far that I know for certain, but there's got to be. I mean, that's what it looks like, and it's
Hmm.
much more apparent than Spiffbo, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
But hey, I just real quick, I want to say, like, so Mark Lawrence, you mentioned him a couple times. I think I interrupted you both times you were talking about Mark, but
no,
he is the whole reason that I read indie books at all. When his third, so I absolutely am a huge fan of his writing. I love that his prose is so tight.
mm,
His books are like 300 to 350 pages long because he doesn't add a whole bunch of that flowery, unnecessary prose. And I joke that he is what Robert Jordan could have been for Wheel of Time if he hadn't described every chair in every room that nobody was ever going to sit in, anyways. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, so because of him, though, when Emperor of Thorns came out, so it would have been his third book.
third.
His first two books were on sale for 99 cents, and that's back when I first started getting into grimdark, and so I bought those
Oh,
two, and then read Emperor of Thorns, and then I was just hooked from there on out. And because of him, though, so that would have been about the time that Spiffbo 3 was out. And so because of I went to his website and I saw the Spiffbo thing, and then next thing I know, Dirk Ashton, Rob Hayes, they were both finalists for 3. So was ML Spencer, actually Mel was, and Matt MD Presley.
yeah,
I actually ended up interviewing all 10 of the Spiffbo 3 finalists and 8 of the Spiffbo 4 finalists while I was doing, back doing the interviews. The 2 that I didn't interview, I made a mistake of doing book reviews. I had already done the book review before they were finalists, and I
mm,
didn't like either their books, and
yeah.
they both were like, yeah, I would prefer not to go on your channel. And I was like, fair enough. I did rate your book pretty low.
So I get their point, but I also get the point of like, so I'm often asked, why do I speak to so many authors that I don't necessarily. So really quick before I get to that point, last year having our fourth child, I wasn't able to read a lot of books, period. So what I would do is interview them and then kind of like read the book
Uh-huh.
and do as much as I could. This year, I'm trying to get in more interviews, but I understand even if there's a book that I don't necessarily click with, like what you're doing as a writer is completely something I can relate with and want to know more about. Just because it didn't fit with me doesn't mean that I'm not enthused by those that it did inspire. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
get that. I get it. But again, I also understand maybe if somebody didn't like my book, why would I come on their channel?
Yeah. Well, in
But
this case, I had done both of their books before they were finalists, right? So I wasn't purposefully doing reviews of the finalists. And then they ended up being finalists, one after I'd read their books, and I was like, well, and one of them I was probably meaner than I should have been. I don't leave negative reviews very much, but when I do, it usually is because like there's some sort of technical thing that I didn't appreciate, and that's what it was basically I was like, I don't think this author did their research. And when I asked if they wanted to be on the podcast, they were like, no, you don't think I do a very good job of researching, so I don't think I need to come onto that. And I was like they directly referenced it. I was like, uh-oh, probably
well,
wasn't my best thing.
now on the flip side, now I disagree with you. You said what you meant, and I don't think that you should ever feel indifferent about that. But what they could
Yeah.
have done has been like, so I'm glad you had me on for this SPFBO finalist chat. So I know you weren't a fan, but I'm a finalist. What's up? Yeah, they could have
Yeah.
played that card, and that would have been so fun. In a fun kind of friendly way.
Yeah.
Not everybody does that, and
Yeah.
not everybody can be friendly. But I think that would have been a good take if I was an author. But
Yeah.
either way, if I write a book and you don't dig it, like, man, that's the most reading and being a fan or not a fan of a book is one of the most subjective things. It's like movies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the respect or disrespect of the person that wrote it or filmed it, this or that. So I like that you took that and still wanted to interview them. The other point
Ed,
was is
there were
like,
not, sorry to interrupt you, but Ed, there were not tomatoes, potatoes, or bell peppers in 3rd century Rome. Okay. Sorry,
I
I
love it.
I mentioned.
You're much better at reading comments. I have gotten, look, I've tried to get better. And I think if I ever do get to like a certain number of subscribers or people watching that are commenting, I have to have moderating because look, I am not good at speaking and reading. And
Yeah.
I think I missed something. I think I'm getting better at it though. But what I do is I stop the conversation like I'm about to do right now and look over the comments.
Yeah.
But while I'm doing that, if anybody, so it was kind of about your Mark Lawrence talk. It was,
Uh-huh.
if anybody's confused about what Grimdark is, read Prince of Thorns because Jork will introduce you to Grimdark in the most purest way.
Yeah, there's a reason why he is regularly listed as one of the most controversial MCs in any series. Like he is he's really got almost no redeeming qualities as a person. Like he's a real psychopath, but he is an amazing character.
Yes.
Now, personally though, I love Jalen, the Prince of Fools, his second trilogy. He's one of my favorite characters. He's so Jorg is like a psycho. Jalen at one point gets banished because he slept with 3 nuns, right? One and not 1 or 2, but 3. So he had to leave because the Pope was upset with him. And so like that's him, right? Like he's not trying to kill everybody. He just wants to have a good time, party, and then he ends up like being super important, right? In the whole series. He's a great MC.
Look,
But
I relate to so many of those characters, not because obviously I've done anything that Jorg has done. Look, and by the way, within the first chapter and a half, you know exactly where this is going. Like it's not really a spoiler, but you know, that first chapter ends, and then the second one. I remember the lines that he said about a farmer's loved one, and it's like, whoa. Like I get why people. This is a divisive book, but I relate with. You know, I kind of like to think of me the last 10 years. Well, let's say 9 years as a kind of a new guy because I can relate to those dark moments of those grim dark main characters. And again, it's not like I did anything that I read. But I had, you know, there was a dark point of my life, and I'll do a live about my story soon. I just don't know how I'm going to do it yet because I think it will inspire people. But I think that for me, I wanted to kind of speak on why I love a darker book, and it's because I think that even the darkest, to a certain point, there is definitely a threshold where I don't think you can come back, like based on a lot of like themes in a grimdark book. There's definitely things where I don't think that as a human you can come back, but you know, I had certain dark parts about me where it's like I love a redeeming story, where somebody kind of starts out and they're like, I'm in this funk, right? And shows us the readers how you can end up rooting for them as they better themselves, or even if they don't better themselves, you can kind of relate to those issues or themes.
yeah, I think that also. Like when it comes to grimdark and you know, and I've loved it for years and years now as well, and I think that like what makes the difference between like a great grimdark and a you know, just your run-of-the-mill all about gratuitous violence is that that, you know, like that it's not the violence is, it's there, it happens, you know, just like it has in our own world, but it's not celebrated, right? Like that I think that you know, we know these characters, these grimdark characters are flawed, that that they're not good people, and that maybe they don't even deserve to live in the good world. Like if that happened, they happen to make it happen, right? But they're not. the books aren't just trying to they're not glorifying the violence. It's a thing that we know is a negative and that it is harmful.
What you're saying, and I think it touches very hard on the subject that I say the same line every time. I love a darker book that is dark for a reason in the story. If it's just for the shock value, I can't respect it.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
no,
know,
absolutely. What's funny, so somehow I managed to, in my most popular by a long shot YouTube video, I
Mhm.
actually I don't know how, one of my favorite series of all time is the Ash and Sand series by Richard Nell. He's an
Yes.
indie author. Yeah. And Ruka might be my absolute favorite character in all of fantasy. By book 2 and book 3, like there's times when I actually jumped up and yelled hell yeah, like it was just so awesome and exciting. But it's funny, like Ruka, he starts off the very first opening scene of the books, he's eating another child, right, because he's
Oh,
trying to
wow.
avoid starvation. I mean, it's dark.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I read the book in the winter. That winter, I think, was like we had snow on the ground for like 100 days. It was a record for the valley. I actually saw the book in black and white in my mind. It was so dark to start off with, and then by the end, there you see, and it's also set in like a Siberia-like place. And so
Winter.
I just remember thinking, like, man, this book might be too dark. And then by the end of the book, like it was great. And by books 2 and 3, the setting changes a little bit. Ruka, our main character, starts to be a little bit more redeemed. The things he's doing are sometimes helping other people, even if like he's still a monster. And I,
Mhm.
I just felt like man, it's just yeah, he's redeemed as a character. And hey, Steve, um, and so like it's just one of those like I love a character that somehow still helps in the end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot recommend the Ash and Sand series by Richard Nell enough if you haven't read it, if you're a Grimdark fan too.
So I'm glad that you brought Richard Nell up. It's a name that I have forgotten for a while. It was when I first started reading, right? I dove into it head first, and Richard Nell was one that I emailed probably 10 times, and I probably don't have the right email, or I just didn't have, the right words, or whatever it was. But I need to know the first book's name. What's the first book in that series name?
Oh my goodness.
Or what's the series name?
Kingdoms of Ash.
King.
Ash and Sand series is the first one. Kings of Ash. I know I have to see. If you hadn't asked me, I could have told you. But now that you asked me, but it's definitely the Ash and Sand series by Richard Nell. And
Oh,
so there's a trilogy out, and then another book that came out afterwards. And then now he's got some different Kings of
that's
Paradise. There we are.
yes, that's the one where it's like the beach and there's a
A
flag in the
sword,
sand.
yeah.
Yeah, swords in the
Sword, yeah.
sand.
We sword with the flag. Yeah, yep, that's it.
And
And
that's the
so,
one that I remember researching, and I'm like, this guy is writing some stuff that I know I need to read. So thank you for reminding me
yeah.
to add to my TPR, like close TPR.
Yeah, no, if
Um,
you when you mentioned Jorg, that like it's one of those that he's basically him to start off with in some ways, but ends up being a way better person, a character, even if he's not.
he's
And also,
redeemable.
yes, and I want to say one of the coolest magic systems in any book ever. I can't talk about it because it
Thank
would
you.
be a spoiler, but like it's
I am
amazing.
still looking for that. Look, I've heard the Brandon Sandersons and I've read Elantris, which I wasn't huge, and I want to wait to go to The Way of Kings, right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty big. I'm reading a huge one right now, or I just got finished with a huge one. ML Spencer's Dragon Mage. It's
Hmm.
like 800 pages. It just right now
Yeah.
that 800 pages takes me a while, people.
Well, with 4
But
kids.
yeah, it does. It just takes so long because I just read at night, and look, I fall asleep pretty quick.
Speaking
My
of
hair's
800
gone.
pages, I see Patricia Anderson in
Yeah,
here in the
Tiff.
chat. I just read Daughters of Tith. If I ever finally put out an episode, it's already recorded, it's edited. I mean, it's got a thumbnail. It's literally ready to go. I just have to actually, finally start putting out episodes. I'm the first week of May. after my little break, your episode will come out. I promise.
I love that, and I'm glad I've had her on the channel. And it was after I read. Now, please correct me if I mess this name up, Jay Patricia Anderson. And sometimes I feel weird calling people their author names, but I'm
Yeah,
going
I
to
know.
because that's your name. I want people to look that up. Um, from Feather and Bone. Either way, her novella. I've
Uh-huh.
never felt a book before. I felt every minute of that, and my wife loved it too. And like I told you
Awesome.
earlier, she's not a huge fantasy fan, and she loved yes, Your Blood and Bone. Yes, Your Blood and Bones. It is a book that you'll read quickly, but it will last. Like I remember specifically every scene that happens in that book. It's very short. You'll get through it quickly, but it is a lasting. Now, she sent me Daughters of Tith. I haven't read it yet, but it is on my this year's reading list, and I'm very excited because I absolutely loved her prose
Yeah, it
in
was.
Your Blood Bones.
And it's like I said, for a world building and character development fan like myself, it was definitely a book that I really enjoyed.
It was funny. I remember asking her about that book when I was interviewing her, and she it was funny because as an author it's kind of hard to answer certain questions. So I'm going to ask you since you just kind of read it. She couldn't really give me. I mean, she could, but it was almost like I put her on the spot or something about what the overview of Daughters of Tith is about. What would you say without
Um,
any spoilers?
it is about a magical group of people who are supposed to be like guardians of humanity, who have been stopped from, being able to go through the portals to do that, and they've basically been listless for generations because they haven't been able to. They don't have to eat, sleep, or anything, right? So they are basically doing nothing for generations, and where a couple of the daughters of Tith are going to change that. There we are.
I love that. And you can even see proof here. I can't explain it. I love that though because in her mind, she created this. She's like, I don't want
Yeah,
to put it in a box or, you know, I want the readers to tell me what they. Yeah. So thank you for that, man.
there you are.
Steve is commenting. The prose is fire. 3 fires. That's extra fiery. Um, I love that, man. So many wonderful people. Daughter of Tith is about tree supremacy. Okay, I mean, the cover looks like some. She did
That's
speak on
true.
like the little cloudy little spots, like about how that's in the magic system. I
Hmm.
don't want to know too much more, but I did get a little explanation of the cover, so that was cool, which is great, by the way. And it's a chunker. So anybody
It is
that
a chunk.
can write a chunk, man, bravo. Uh, Watch me fail at marketing. No, 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 no. You're not doing that. You're getting booktubers to read your book. That's what's up.
And I promise there will be an episode out.
Oh, dude, I you know I was hoping that you would say the name because I have one detail of like this dark series that you talk about on your Grimdark episode, but I don't want to say it because it's kind of a divisive part of the book. But I think it was. What was your favorite Grimdark series on that episode? Maybe it wasn't your favorite. I don't know.
Trying to remember I can't even remember. The worst part is that I completely forgot to put Ash and Sand on the series, and it's like a top on that episode, and it's like a top at worst top 10, maybe as high as top 5 favorite series for me, and I left it off. I feel like the entire episode should have failed and had no views, and instead it's got like 6,500 right now. I mean, I
Oh
don't have.
wow,
Yeah, I've got 2 other that are like around 1,000, and that one somehow the YouTube algorithm loved,
dude,
and
that Grimdark.
I left off one of my favorite series. But otherwise, I think I had Mark Lawrence, I had Black Company. What did I have?
I'm looking at it. Nope, I found it. It's Richard K. Morgan's A
Oh
Land Fit
yeah,
for Heroes. That's
yeah,
it.
yeah. So he's a bit controversial as an author these days, but the series itself, yeah, it is. I mean, it is grimdark. It is, and I think that that it was so impactful for me because it really showed the horrors of war, right? Like our main character, he's got some pretty severe PTSD. He was a war hero, but he's gay, so
Yes,
he's
that was the
dealing with
part I remember.
yeah,
Is and I
yeah,
didn't want to say that.
yeah, and he's dealing with a religious system that he would end up in a gibbet for being gay if they knew, and but like he's got a little bit of leniency because he's a war hero and his family is important, right? But still, he's still in danger, right?
Yep, and that sounds so much up my like. It's again. I remember you saying that he was gay during it and that he had trouble. And I've never read a grimdark fantasy that had that aspect to it,
Hmm.
and like the consequences that you talk about with that sounds very intriguing to me, and I would love to read that. So I'm very much looking. Yeah, Richard K. Morgan and
Yeah.
Richard Nell, dude. Yeah, you've talked those up enough to where I'm just like so excited.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that Richard K. Morgan, especially if you go back when he started writing those in the '90s, like that, Black Company, they're like real pillars of grimdark, for like the earlier days of along with probably George R. R. Martin, in terms of like if you would have named a big three, 20 years ago, like those three definitely would have all been included.
Richard K. Morgan.
Yeah, I think so for sure.
That's awesome.
I think that he keeps making controversial statements that
Mm.
maybe have made
Like on
him
his personal
personal
life.
life, yes, personal life issues, right? So, but like in terms of the books, I don't think that the books, are all that controversial in terms of, personally, it's his outside statements, right? That, and he always anytime someone calls out, he's one of those guys that's going to double down,
Yeah.
So, but but yeah, it's a great series. I really loved it, and sorry, Mark, what is he in the UK then, or is that where we were going with, or somewhere else? I just saw the
This one.
yeah.
It's so weird that he is rich. Oh yeah. So that would be cool to know. I wanted to throw up Mark Timoney. You know what? I have to leave my 1 second. You guys just hang out. I might mess my green screen up, but just whatever. I'll be right back.
Oh, I got you. Just in okay, but yeah, but no, I definitely read his books, and what we got here going on.
All right, folks. Sorry about that. I don't usually do that, but Mark Timoney is like next on my list to read this year, and I have to. Hold on, sorry, you guys can see my dining room table. Okay, hey,
We're good still.
We're all humans here. So Mark Timoney, right? I got a hold of him because I'd heard so much about his book, The Blood of the Spear, and it ended up just being one of those that I'm so proud to put on my shelf, even though I haven't read it yet. But I'm about to. It's like my next grab after either Wick or one other. Either way, I'm getting into it within the next 2 months. So here's the hardcover, The Blood of the Spear by Mark Timoney. And right, that's a beautiful cover, right? So, but look, but these people, these authors that just really wow me, their naked hardbacks are just equally as beautiful. It's got the quote on the back. So I had to shout that out, man. Mark, I'm so much looking forward to reading it and having you on the channel to talk about it. He's over in Australia, and in Australia, it's tomorrow for us.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, and that's where old Ed is. He's New Zealand, so
he's New Zealand, yeah, which is probably a similar.
I
But
imagine
I do
it's
know.
gonna be.
I know just from experience, New Zealand and Australia, the hardest for us U.S. in the Eastern. Hold on, you're not Eastern. You're
I'm Mountain Time Zone.
Mountain time.
Yep.
So what time is it right now for you? 8?
Yeah, it's about to be 8 o'clock. Yep, 8 o'clock. It is 8.
Good deal. That's cool. So, Mark, man, thank you. I'm so glad that you were here. Somebody I'm really highly looking forward to talking with. That is sick, Josh. It is just the coolest. I believe, no, I know Silverstones. He had it sent through Silverstones, which, man, rep Silverstones. I love Silverstones. So yeah, those two authors, especially from you, I'm looking forward to. Um, do you have any goals that you have for 2024 for your channel, or are you just kind of going with the wind and doing what you want?
You know what? I had some very, very set goals, and I had all kinds of plans that I was going to stick to, and then I blew that up literally January 1st. Excuse me, sorry, I had a little cough there. I started reading the Robin Hobb, and it was literally one of my favorite fantasy books of all time.
With the Assassin's
And
Apprentice?
yes, with Assassin's Apprentice. And so then I ended up reading the entire trilogy to start my year off instead of only reading the first one. And then right after that, I started Sun Eater, literally my next series. Well, guess what? I read all 5 of them that were out instead of doing another series.
You're that
And
far?
oh yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I'm waiting for the audiobook to I made that was what I did after book 3 was I made myself only listen to the audiobooks. And then I did Dungeon Crawler Carl and I did every one of those all in a row. And so yeah, no, I was planning on like I had like almost 40 books on my TBR that I was going to try and do like 8 of them a month. And then I was going to do one classic, and I have just thrown it all out.
You know, there's a couple people who I talk to regularly, Timothy Wolf being one, and my buddy DB Rook, who wrote Callus and Crow, being in the other, that just their absolute favorite novels of all time were within the realm of the Elder. Just, Robin Hobb was that, and I'm very much looking forward to this experience because I've followed booktubers on this. What is it, 16 books?
I think, yes, maybe 16 or 17 for sure. Yeah.
Look, and they're not small either. So what I did
No,
do
they got
is I
long.
made sure, I wanted to do it the right way. So I got the illustrated Assassin's Apprentice. And when I first got it, it was very, very early in this reading adventure of mine. So it just didn't click at first because, well, that's like reading Sun Eater as your very first. Well, that's my second sci-fi, so maybe I'm different, but it's not the easiest to follow if you're not somewhat. I don't know. What do you think? Is it is an experienced reader, or is it like
So I
a story follower?
So no, I don't know. I just got into it, and so here's my thing. I'm a visual, like I get into a movie in my mind when I'm reading, and if the story is told well, then I am going to get into that movie in my mind, and I'm just gonna like I basically will all of a sudden it'll be like 3 hours after I started reading, and I'm 400 pages in, and I don't even realize, and that's how it was with these books with me. They're just I just felt like they just clicked with me. I loved the story. I liked the characters. And what's funny is that I thought at first I wasn't going to like it because that
The
Fitz
ending.
lives. Yeah, that Fitz lives through it all, right? Because he's telling the story himself as an old man. And but I don't know. I almost feel like Robin Hobb ends up treating Fitz worse than she needed to, because you had to worry about him still, even if you knew he was going to live. You still have to be like, man, he's not coming out of this stuff whole, anyways.
I just had a minor epiphany. I thought you were talking of Sun Eater. So,
Oh, I'm sorry, but hey,
no, no,
Sun
no.
Eater. Hey, Sun. It
I was
works
going to
for Sun
say
Eater too. Yeah, no, it
that
totally
was
works for that
perfect.
too. Yeah, because he. Well, I mean, it's a crazy series. I mean, I think that with Sun Eater, for me, too, one of the things is the scope of it. Like, this story takes place over thousands of years.
50 years in like as a
Yeah,
frozen person at a time, like my
and
mind was just blown.
Yeah, I think that, and that's funny too. It's another thing with like the Vorkosigan saga is part of why I think the epic scale of it too that I really love, And I always think of one thing that's crazy to me with like going back, the Vorkosigan saga being an inspiration for Christopher Rocchio is that like a lot of people have never heard of this series or they don't know who
Never.
she is. Louise Buchholz. She has won more like major sci-fi, like Nebulas, Locusts, Hugos, than any other author, male or female, for this series. And
What's the last
people
name?
have Lewis. It's Buh or Bujold. Um,
Okay,
and
sorry.
the Vorkosigan saga I think is 14 books. Anyways, I loved them. They were my first like real foray into space opera, probably. Aside from, I guess, like Star Wars and Star Trek and stuff, which I've never read any of the books for those. I just liked the
We've got some
visual.
fans over in the chat of Lois
Yeah,
McMaster's
Mrs.
Buhold.
Buhold. Yeah. And I have to tell my own little personal story with her. So when I started reading the books, I friended her on Goodreads, and I talked with her while I was reading her books, and
Wow.
she kept telling me that I was crazy because I read all 14 of them in a row.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, this was before I was doing the podcast, and so I just loved them, and it was funny just like talking to her while I was reading her books, and so
Did you have this like vision of, so before you knew how authors were, and I have to say it's pretty much uh, common through indie and traditionally published
yeah,
authors. They're just the most just purest hearted people. They're so kind with their time.
yeah, and
Especially,
accessible.
yes.
Yeah,
It's just, it was like before I had the channels, like they're superstars. And then to find out that I can speak with these superstars was just a whole nother experience. Every one of you over here in the chat that write books, man, just to find out that you wanted to talk to a guy like me or Cameron that, love to read your work is an experience you'll give to every booktuber, reviewer
yeah,
that asks you for their book. At least most of them. I can't speak for all because there's bad apples and everything. But for me, and I know a lot of other people, it was an experience like it was very refreshing,
yeah.
eye-opening.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's one of the craziest things about doing this to me is that um like it's probably hard to get someone like George R.R. Martin or Stephen King like that, like superstar level, but
Yeah.
like literally anyone below that, like even if they're not like going to come on the show, like you can have chats, and it just seems like I feel like I'm just intruding sometimes, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, but can I talk to you? And they're like, oh no, yeah, sure. They're like, you like my books, and they want to talk with you about it, and it's like
Well, think about it. You have this
amazing.
story that's like pounding at your heart to get out, right? And you write that, and then there's people who want to talk to you about that. Even if there's a million people, it's like I want to talk to all of them because they like what my very unique mind wrote. It makes
Hmm.
sense. But
Yeah,
I think, again, it's just been the coolest. I think I really noticed it like with, well, I mean, first I have to say, now that you brought it up, and I'm glad you did, I forgot to say something. The SPFBO was huge uh, for me making my very first introductory like interview list.
hmm
It was like I went through like the top 30 and just randomly picked people, and then had people back like East Egg Ed, who just I really get along with. So I had to reach out to Mark and at least try to talk to him. And Mark was gracious, and he's got a lot on his plate, a lot of uh, stuff in his personal life, and he was so nice about it. And it was just I think all authors deserve to hear how they make people feel. I don't think that they really understand. And that's cool, Ed. I love to see that. It's the dream of every author to have friends who actually read their books, man. I can imagine as somebody who wants to be that person, but also the guy that's like on the other end who's reading your books. Like if I'm reading your book, you're a superstar. Doesn't matter if you're indie or are traditionally published. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. So it's very cool.
yeah. And I think, well, actually, I have to bring up one. Mark Lawrence was my white whale, the one that got away. He wasn't back when I was actually doing, author interviews regularly. He wasn't doing any
No.
interviews, and he didn't do one until he did the Grimdark one. God, I can't remember the podcast now. They still do the Facebook group, but they used to do the podcast, and he finally went on and did theirs. And but before that, I kept trying to get him to do it, and
Mhm.
but then
Well, he has a good reason. Yeah,
yeah,
he
no, yeah, it
needed.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It,
Um,
the way he put it to me was like, I realized in 2024, for people to understand or realize, for new readers to know I have books that are coming out, I have to
mhm,
adapt and have to talk to people.
yeah.
And he got away with it for a while for understandable reasons. He's got a lot on his plate. But
Mhm.
that was the reason he says, like, I didn't do these. And lately, I've been saying more times yes than no. So when you asked him, he wasn't doing like anything. Um, he had a lot bigger things on his plate, and now that he is, it's cool.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Grimdark
Um,
Gods for the Beard.
yeah. And one funny one too, though, is one of my very first episodes that my wife and I did together was the Prince of Thorns, and she
Uh,
hated it. She
your wife,
absolutely, yeah, she
I can
hated it.
understand why.
Yeah, she hated Jorg. I mean, it's understandable why. She also didn't particularly care for Jalen,
Yeah,
but she absolutely loved. It counts as one of her favorite series is the um, Nona, the Murder Nuns. How can I? Red Sister. There we
Red
are.
Sister. Yeah,
Yes.
I have been wanting to find a hardcover in that for a while.
There, yeah, and she loves those, and so she's read all of those. But yeah, she was not when when we did the review. I'm like, oh god, she's gonna love this, and I was like, wait a minute, why would she love this? Like,
Yeah,
it isn't. It's got a bad start, and
he
I
is
think
a
that
bigot,
yeah,
like times a billion.
she told me she would have stopped reading at the first chapter if I hadn't, we hadn't been going to do a review for it. So I understand that.
You know what got me to pick it up was people saying that they couldn't handle the first few chapters because it was so
Yeah,
dark. I'm like, I need to freaking read this, right?
yeah.
And a lot of my favorite books. I don't know if you've read John Palladino's Trials of Ashmount. Oh,
No, I
brother.
haven't.
Oh my gosh. So listen, he sent me. I'm telling you, when we're done with this, I'm going to get some information. He sent me the two paperbacks that are in excellent condition, and then he knows I'm such a huge supporter of the series. He sent me those in signed hardbacks. So I'm going to send you the paperbacks, and you get to them when you get to them. And I want to know. We'll do another one of these lives about his books, dude. You will love them. I'm telling you. You're a Grimdark fan. I loved them, dude.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll read them.
all right, man. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait. It was, again, one of the very first indie books I read, and I'm like, whoa, dude, this is excellent.
Hmm.
So very much in the same vein of Joe Abercrombie, George R. R. Martin. If those two had a baby, that's what he put out. Um, Ithra, I love this. You were the person that kind of got me interested in Beelman. And look, you're the reason I bought this, The Black Tongue Thief. I also got the audiobook, and I'm loving it.
I haven't read that either, but I've definitely heard about it, but I just never actually read it.
I've never read a book. Again, I'm very new, so there's probably a million out there, but I don't know if there is, so I'm just going to say it. It's like in the point of view of a goblin. And
Oh, okay,
it's
that's
like
cool.
Christopher Beelman narrates his own audiobook, and he's really good. Like, he's got this great accent and kind of
Hmm.
rough and tough voice with it. So it's good, man. But
But
she just read the daughter. I can't remember it's the prequel to this. He's about to come out. The Daughter's War, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, I was that a SPFBO finalist at one point too? I can't remember. I don't know why the name sounds so familiar. Black Tongue
So
Thief.
I know he's published now through Tor.
Oh, okay. So
So
maybe
I'm not sure. Yeah, Daughter's
Orbit.
War. That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Orbit's the one that picks up all of the SPFBO books, of course.
Yeah, like Alexander Darwin and
Yeah.
this guy, Justin Lee Anderson. Yeah, The
Yeah.
Lost War and the Bitter Crown.
Yep. I read The
Um,
Lost War the first time before it was Orbit, and then of course some of the other um, the Books of Babel. There we are. I loved the Books of Babel. They're some of my wife's favorite ones. Josiah Bancroft. He
Oh
was,
yeah.
yeah, he was. But I didn't care for the most recent one as much. Um,
What was it? Hexia or
Hexologist. Yeah, I
Hexologist?
think
Yeah.
the that flowery, ridiculous prose worked so well for me in the Books of Babel, but for some reason it was over the top for me in Hexologist for some reason. So, but yeah, him. Then what is the one that's basically it's orcs, and it was picked up. God, I can't remember if it actually won Spiffbo or if it was a
Oh
finalist, but
yeah.
it's Sons
The
of
Gray
Anarchy with
Bastards.
or yes, Jonathan
Yeah,
Frakes.
dude.
There we are.
Yes,
That one I think was the year that it was there. It was my most fun book of the year. It was so much fun.
dude. I love
Yeah.
this.
There we are. Yeah, I've got somewhere I have my copy too. But yeah, it was so much fun. For some reason I only read the first two. I think there were more than two, weren't there?
I think there were three. Yeah, I
Okay,
think there
yeah.
were
One of
three.
these days I'm gonna have to reread those and include those because it was so much fun.
I've started it. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm one of those guys that I'm a mood reader, right? So I
Hmm.
start a lot and then I finish very few.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm loving it. It's kind of dark, right?
Yeah, but it's
And
fun.
orcs.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun though.
That's cool, man. I don't get very many people who like I can just pick a bunch of like they're right in
Random.
front of me. Oh,
Yeah.
by the
Well,
way, man, I wanted to shout this guy out, man. Like, I know he's back home now, Brian Lee Durfee, man. I doubt he'll see this, but if you do, man, we're rooting for you, brother. As one sick man to another, I know that it can be
yeah.
hard.
Yeah, I mean I'm so glad that that you're finally, doing better. I mean, it just sounded like it was a really rough period of time there.
Dude, I wasn't super sick. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there's some things I was dealing with, but it was more like the politics of it. When you start certain medications, you have to
Mm,
like be observed, and
yeah.
it was more of like this having to get through it, right, than me
Hmm.
necessarily being bad enough to be in the hospital that long. So,
So
yeah,
that's
man,
probably
I'm
even worse
seeing
then.
that's yeah, dude. Yeah, of course. When you're there and you're pretty much healthy, you're just kind of getting through the politics of it for sure. But
Hmm.
I've said it to a lot of people I've had on since, and you were one of these guys, that were talking to me and kind of cheered me on. So I appreciate you, man. Cameron, that was awesome. Much appreciated.
Hey, you bet, man. Just I was hoping that you were still doing okay, and I know it just couldn't have been fun to have to just keep going back and.
So and we also had to reschedule a few times. So I appreciate the patience, man, because I'm having so much fun with you, and
Yeah,
I
life
knew I
happens,
would.
man. I understand.
Um, yeah. So the next kind of thing that I was gonna get to, let me see real quick. I have a lot of these written down, but sometimes I kind of just go with the flow, and that's really I love that too. Like when I'm talking to somebody, I can just go with the flow. And you've
Well, and
been one of those people.
I'm not the best at keeping things on topic. You can ask my wife. She's that person that will like, I'll be just rambling on and she'll be like, stop. We need to finish what we need to talk about. And then if you're going to go off on a tangent, you can, but you need to get back on topic.
Tangents, I have found gold at the end of those. So I'm always a huge fan. If you need to tangent, you go for it. Um, what are you a DNFer? I kind of know this answer, but let's hear it officially.
You know what? For years I was not, and I felt so guilty, and I couldn't do it. And about a year ago, I decided that I was going to DNF a book if I didn't love it. Especially because I don't really enjoy leaving negative reviews. I really see myself as a
Yeah,
positive person. So especially when I'm reading an indie book, like if I'm one of like 10 people who's read a book, which occasionally I will just pick up a book that has no reviews or almost no reviews, right?
yeah.
And I don't really feel like if I'm one of those 10 people who might have a platform that I really need to put out a negative review. So I will often tell an author, hey, I'm going to DNF this book. I don't need to leave a review, but if you want me to, I'll leave a review, but it's going to be negative. And I've
Mm.
only ever had one person. I had one person who was like, I don't care. And it was literally the worst written book I've ever read in my life. I thought it was a joke. I really thought that it was a joke, and because they were a comedian who like that's what their regular job was. They were a comedian. So I thought that they put out a book as bad as it was on purpose. And
That
then
comes with the indie books. It
yeah,
does.
but I mean, but like because they were a comedian, I thought that they wrote the book as a joke. Like, and so I ended up putting out it's literally a 1 star. My only like true terrible one was my review starts off, "This is the worst book I have ever read in my life. I can't recommend anyone ever read this book." And it's my only 1 star that I've ever left.
I honestly haven't talked to, and again, I'm very much in the same kind of mind frame as you. It's like if I read a book and I'm just not into it, I'm probably just not going to review it. I probably will in certain places, but I'm not going to like make a spotlighted video about how negatively I feel about, like, that's not me. But I can see how some authors, there's one of two things. Either they're like a sucker for like punishment, or they're wanting critical feedback. Like it's one of the, and one's very serious and the other's kind of like, I guess it's just as serious, just depending on who the author is.
Yeah.
But with the indie crowd, it's like you're going to get those really great quality books, but you're also going to get, those ones that need some work.
Yeah. Well, I think that the biggest thing these days for me too, and like, I mean, I'm at least 2/3 indie for the most part. I've recently read a few more because of, getting into some big series, but generally I read about 2/3 indie. And I think that I am a bigger fan of character building and world building at this point, character development and world building. So I don't care. Like, I loved Daughters of Tith, but let's be honest, there's a good solid 400 pages where there's not a lot of like action scenes, right? But that's my kind of book. But I don't feel like sometimes you can get that in a traditionally published book because they have to try to go for the biggest potential audience. They can't write their passion book the same way. And I love Daughters of Tith, but I think that if she was trying to write a book for a mass, like, she'd have to start battle scenes, like 100 pages in or less, right? And I think that I get that world building and character development way more often in an indie book than you do in a traditionally published book, is the way I feel.
Yeah, and I think that that's also one of the things, like you pointed out. It's like there's going to be a different kind of idea about going an indie book, and not necessarily like this huge big difference, but I'm going to expect a little more character building and uniqueness too. Like, and I love that. So I love that as a reader, I get to choose, between so many wonderful people and what they get to write about. What I don't like is hearing, as an author, how difficult it can be to market your intended audience. I can just imagine. As a reviewer, I see it, but as an author, you've got that front row seat to something that I can't even begin to give advice on. Or the only thing I know is very shortly after starting my channel, I knew all of a sudden I had this passion. I want to tell a story eventually. I'm after all this knowledge, and I'm writing stuff down, and I want to study it and read. And the biggest thing is reading. I know that. But I do want to eventually tell a story. So I did I'm like, okay, so if I have a following on YouTube, you've seen other YouTubers do a similar thing where they start and write their books, and they're somewhat successful or not, or very successful. That's not how I started or why I started this channel, but it's become a goal of mine. And it's not just to write a book eventually. It's more so as a human, as a dad, as a husband, it speaks a lot to me as a human to read a lot of, indie and traditionally published books. And I keep learning more and more. And it's not something I was familiar with. So that's even cooler for me. It's like a first, It's like a first beer, right, for a 15-year-old. Like, man, I remember exactly how that tasted.
Oh man, I my very first beer, I don't even think I was 15. Would have been a Hams because that's, as I mentioned, beginning, that's what my dad drank. And
Got in the fridge.
yeah, and as I mentioned that my dad was not a book reader, but he was definitely a fan of drinking a beer with his sons who were definitely underage. That was my dad. Like, so
Hey, when my son turns 16, it's not off the table. It's I'm not going to hold it that serious. He's not going to be making stupid decisions and then get that opportunity. But if he's
yeah,
showing some maturity,
yeah.
I'm not against that.
Yeah.
Um,
And hey, I really do apologize, but I'm getting the time to wrap it up pretty quick here. Look, to
no
get the kids to
problem.
bed. So here, I'm having such a great time, but I'm
No,
definitely, it's getting to be kids' bedtime. So
no, I totally understand that, dude. I 100% understand that. So to do so, we'll wrap this up
yeah,
real quick. Guys over in the chat, I want to say thank you, but most of all, I want to say thank you to Cameron, and more so his wife and kids. Look, tell them I said that because I know I've been having you for a little bit, for about an hour and a half. I know how long that is. So tell your wife I said thank you for letting me borrow
will do.
you. You go get that family time in. I've had so much fun, Cameron. I'll have to have you back on. We'll talk soon. Everyone,
Absolutely.
everyone in the chat, thank you so much. And tomorrow night, I'll be back with my guy, Timothy Wolf. We'll be talking
Awesome.
about his books and a lot of the same things that me and Cameron talked about. Man, keep doing what you're doing on your channel. Tell your wife I said thank you. You have a wonderful night, Cameron.
Hey, you too. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I've absolutely loved the talk, and I could keep talking for forever, but
I
my wife
totally,
and kids, it's time. It's bedtime. So
absolutely, I respect it.
awesome. Thanks, guys.
Have a good night, guys.